1. Quick backstory. I was in a very toxic work environment and had been very unhappy for more than 6 months. Every time I thought things would get better, things got worse. A new job fell into my lap, quite literally. I hadn't been actively looking. I interviewed on a Thursday, and they sent me my offer letter the very next day on Friday. The 2 owners of the company were supposed to be coming into the office that Friday, as it was their last day before they went on an optional and completely not necessary, might I add, networking trip out of town the next week. I waited all day for them to show, until finally, after lunch, I called to see where they were at, and if they would be in, only to find out they didn't plan to come in anymore. So, I had no other option but to give them my 2 weeks' notice right over the phone. I would have definitely preferred to do this in person, but I wasn't going to wait a week to tell them in person, which would make me end up working 3 more weeks there. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but I was really just over the toxicity, and for my own mental health, I just couldn't wait. Obviously, they were pissed and they took it very personally, even though I did tell them I was leaving for a better professional opportunity and better health benefits, nothing personal. They made my last 2 weeks miserable. Even with them out of town for 1 out of the 2 weeks, they were constantly bombarding me with various tasks that weren't normally part of my position, on top of lining everything out for my replacement, which is not very easy to do with 3 different job positions, since I had 1,000,001 tasks. I even helped them pack up their entire office and helped them move and unpack the new office. Oh, and I ran the entire renovation of the new office with 0 thanks. I was having to deal with insults, backhanded compliments, and I even walked in on an active shit-talking session about me. The last Thursday I had to work was the worst day out of all of them, and everyone treated me like shit so that at the end of the day, I left all my keys, computer, and credit cards in my desk. The next morning at exactly 7 a.m. I sent them this email. Good morning. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it into the office today. Both office keys, laptop, and Home Depot card and credit card are on my desk already. I have turned over all my job duties to another coworker and prepared him as best as I can. I'm very grateful for the knowledge and experience I gained from this position. Wish you guys the best of luck in your hiring process. Please mail my final check, and I gave them the address. My boss immediately called me and told me it was mandatory for me to go into the office to sign paperwork and get my last check. I sent her a link to the state website stating an employer is required to send the paycheck within 72 hours of the last date of employment, and that there is no paperwork that I am legally required to sign, so I would not be returning. I had also started a newsletter for them and had a bunch of templates. I provided them with the password, but didn't realize it had 2-factor authentication. Did I give them the one-time code? Nope. My last parting gift to them is getting to recreate everything I had put together. Peace out. 2. Many years ago, I used to work for a company that did a lot of traveling. We're talking 12 to 20 hours in a day in a truck with another guy. Often 5 to 10 days at a time. When we stopped at hotels, which was not every night, sometimes you slept in the truck, we would get separate hotel rooms so you would have a little bit of personal space. There was a per diem rate, and as long as we kept the hotel rooms under that rate, it never was an issue. Well, after about 15 years of this, the company suddenly decided that separate rooms was costing too much money. We had to share rooms now, regardless of the cost. The job market was fairly good at this point in time, and a few guys basically quit on the spot, and the rest complained a lot. Now, this actually created 2 forms of malicious compliance. The first one is instead of looking for a moderately priced hotel, often the drivers would max out the accepted rate. For example, we often would drive out of major cities and stay in the suburbs, where hotels and motels are cheaper. Not anymore. You'd find the really nice hotel downtown, and you'd have to pay for parking down there too for the truck, so you expense that also. Then some guys took the policy a step further. You would walk into a hotel and say, "I'll give you the max rate for this room." They would chat up the hotel desk, explain the situation, and deliberately overpay for the room, spending every cent they could underneath the max rate, just to cost the company a bit more money. The second bit of malicious compliance took a bit more conniving behind the scenes. Shortly after this change was made, it just so happened that the head manager of the company needed to head out on one of these trips, which was a relative rarity. Through some backdoor dealings, a few of us managed to get the most obnoxious, smelliest driver on the schedule with him. This guy was a bit of a trip, nice guy, but didn't like to shower very often, talked your ear off, and refused to turn on the radio, was pretty slovenly, and liked to watch porn really loud on the TV in the hotel room. Wasn't the brightest bulb either, but was relatively competent at his job and easygoing otherwise. After sharing a hotel room with him for one night, the manager decided he needed his own hotel room. We made sure everyone in the company knew the manager could not even hack it for more than 1 day sharing a room, and this caused some pretty strong strife. A few more good guys quit. Shortly thereafter, they reinstated the policy of individual hotel rooms. But now the damage had been done. Some of the guys really liked staying downtown, so the parking fees for the trucks went up. The overall cost of the hotel rooms went up too. 3. Back in 2019, when I was living in a dormitory, we had a roommate who was in his 30s, and he seemed to be someone working as a daytime worker at a manufacturing company. Every single time he speaks on his phone, he was so loud that the entire floor would hear him, and everyone in the room would have to constantly remind him to tone it down. He was a 150 decibel noise machine. I used to work in IT as a support engineer, and I had to work rotational shifts. So every time I had night shifts, I needed to sleep during daytime. Given the amount of stress at work and the time my body took to adjust to different schedules, my mental and physical health was a big-time mess. Sleep is the only thing that I had under my control, or so I thought. This guy has so many calls every single day, and he answers every damn call inside his small dorm room. Most of them are not even related to work from what I could remember. I politely asked him so many times to answer his phone in the corridor outside when I or anyone is asleep, but it felt like talking to a stone. He acts the same way again and again and again. Not sure if he thought that everyone would get tired of asking him and then eventually adjust to his shit. Well, I am not giving up. One day, I was having an awful mood, zero energy and no time for bullshit. I desperately needed my 8 hours sleep, if not at least 6 hours of good sleep. But our guy was on leave, stayed at the dorm, and had to speak with his entire family tree. He was so fucking annoying, loud, arrogant, and totally careless that I just couldn't take it. I first gave him an angry look from my sleep. He acted like it was nothing. I asked him to speak slowly or go outside until he is done with his call, as I am not able to sleep at all. He turned his back on me to avoid any more interactions, and went on with his call, speaking louder than ever. Well, bitch, I tried to be respectful. Now it's time for me to be a bitch. I set an alarm for the next 5 minutes. My phone had this annoying rooster alarm tone. I dialed up my phone's alarm volume to the highest, and I waited. He was still speaking on his phone when the alarm went off. I woke up, held my phone in my hand, and never stopped the alarm. It was deafening in my ears, but I just held onto it. He thought I'd stop it eventually. When it automatically stopped in a minute, I replayed the alarm tone again and again and again. He looked at me, but I acted like he didn't exist. I just kept playing this annoying rooster tone. The speaker on the other end of his call probably asked him about the noise, and he loudly said it was someone's alarm, as if to tell the person, me, in the room that he was getting disturbed. I did not stop it. He stared at me, but I just replayed the deafening alarm tone with a poker face without looking at him until he left the fucking room to answer his calls. That's all. He never spoke a word after this, and in the next couple of days left our dorm room. It was so peaceful after that. I slept happily ever after. 4. This happened nearly 10 years ago, and it was not malicious compliance on my part, but I did carry it out. I work in the IT field, and one of my clients was in litigation over something that I never cared to commit to memory. Well, they call me over and say they must produce emails from the present day back like 5 years. So I'm thinking, I have the emails, cool. I'll export it and send it over via an external drive. Nope. The client reads the summons, and it states, printed, floppy drive, disk drive, flash drive, or external hard drive. Miss Owner says I want to send them printed copies. I explain the volume of paper it will take, and she says to print them. Okay, I'll export them to a printable format, and then show Jack how to print the emails. No, sir, I want you to do it. Jack's time is too valuable to the company. I'm like, okay, you do understand my hourly rate is way more than Jack's hourly rate. She acknowledged this, so I go, yes, ma'am. I grab the client's card and purchase some software to export the volume of emails required and convert them to a format that is easily printed. No need for me to work harder than needed. The company has a habit of carbon copying everyone on the team each email. And if there are attachments, that attachment is copied in each email and reply. Some emails had dozens and dozens of attachments. Another habit was not using subject lines, which irked me to the point that I had a mail rule set that any emails to me were marked as read and deleted if there was an empty subject line, then an auto-reply stating what was done with the email. So back to the malicious compliance. I spent a couple of days exporting emails from a dozen or so employees. I then start the conversion process. On about day 3, I start printing. I try to keep things sorted, but that was just mind-blowing. The email threads with all the attachments had me going in circles. I give Miss Owner an update, and she calls her legal representation. She calls me back to her office and says, OP, the summons did not say the information had to be sorted, stapled, or labeled on our part, so print. Yes, ma'am. I go back to the office I had commandeered and continue printing. I quickly found that if I load all 5 printer trays with paper, I can select a couple of hundred emails and send them to the printer. This gave me time to walk around or surf the internet. I got to the point when I knew the sound of the printer switching trays. I would then refill the empty. This went on for 8 hours a day. The printer would stop after a while, and internal fans would spin up and cool it off, and then print again. The printer leasing company had to come in and put in a maintenance kit during the job and shortly afterward. When all was completed, I spent over 2 weeks at 8 hours a day billable time and had a pallet of paper shrink-wrapped and ready for shipping. Both Miss Owner and I had a bit of an evil grin when the pallet was loaded on the freight truck. Miss Owner took years to pay my employer that time and all the other time I spent on other jobs. To explain further, our company did regular IT work for her company before and after this task. She just got slow on paying her bills for the print job and other jobs around the office that we did after this. The print job was thousands and thousands of US dollars. I don't know what the fallout was, I didn't care to ask. Oh, and the mail rule, for those wondering, there was no option for an empty subject line, so my rule was it had to have any of the vowels A, E, I, O, U, or a number between 0 to 9. 5. Okay, the first thing you need to know that is Australian weather is temperamental, to put it kindly. One day it's hell in a handbasket, and it's more sweat than water. Then next has a bone-seeping chill. Because of this, my family installed reverse air cycle aircons. If you don't know, it's a heater and cooler fan. The only one relevant to this story is the one right next to the back door. Our house is mostly open plan. We have the dining table near the back door, and the kitchen is separated by a breakfast island. While the lounge room has a cupboard and half wall separating it, The other rooms around aren't necessary to name and place. The back aircon can heat up the main body of the house on its own, but there is another aircon in the lounge in case Mum and I get too cold or hot. Dad has his own man cave room at the back of the house near the back aircon. It is also open plan, so it gets its temp from the back aircon. Our table placement goes back door, aircon, Dad. Table, Mum, me. This is to say, when I sit at the table, I am directly in line with the aircon's breeze. Okay, now to the actual PettyRevenge story. It's summer, and in the mid-30s, the sun is still glaring down at the red earth, although it's already dinner time, 7 p.m. The aircon is whirring, spewing a lovely cold breeze. Mum calls us for dinner, a delicious chicken stir-fry. I go to turn off the aircon like usual, but my dad yells for me to leave it on. Additional note, my dad works in construction. Once he finishes work, he goes straight back into the backyard to build some more, most of the time up until dinner. I tell him I'll turn it back on after eating. No, leave it on, it's hot, he says, drenched in sweat. I reach for the remote again to turn it off, again explaining my reasons. We've had this convo many times before, but I always turned it off anyways. He swears at me, and I decided to leave it on. Instead of sitting in my seat, I sit in my dad's seat, so he was forced to sit in mine. He wanted cold, he got cold. Oh, did I mention he puts the temp at 20 degrees centigrade? That's about 68 Fahrenheit. That is freezing in the summer heat, especially when you're drenched in sweat. I slowly ate my noodles in malicious glory before deciding to leave the table and munch on some Maltesers for dessert in the lounge. He didn't stay seated in my seat for long. My seat in the lounge has a perfect view to see the table. He shifted to sit back in his spot to finish dinner. Victory never tasted so sweet. We haven't had the aircon debate since. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 148. I know, another one a day after. It's what I had ready. I've got like four videos, I think, almost ready to go, but I need about one story for each of them. So hopefully that should take care of us for the rest of the week. Okay, let's see. We had a break yesterday, so if you could please like the video and possibly click on the notification bell and make sure you're getting all notifications. So you get all notifications for the Hellfreezer videos, because it would be a sad thing if you weren't getting more Hellfreezer in your inbox. Very sad thing indeed. Anyway, we mustn't spend our time thinking of such awful things, and let's move on to today's birthday shout-out, because we have a birthday shout-out, eh? And this goes to Mama Wolf's son, who is the Wolf's Tech. And he's 27 today. A very happy birthday to you, bud. Let's see, we are on Tuesday, so you can celebrate right through to 11:59 next Monday. Overindulge plenty, but you have to be good after that. We all have to be good after the celebratory times. Okay, now, before we have Hellfreezer's question of the day, I'm going to sing Happy Birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear the Wolf's Tech. Happy birthday to you. Okay, let's see. Right, now, before we go, Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, throughout our lives we get advice from people. Friends, family members, weird people on the street who just stop and randomly give you advice. Sorry about that if I did that to you. Anyway, what is the best piece of advice you have ever gotten that still holds you in good stead to this day? In my case, it was my parents taught me, because we didn't come from a very rich family, that if you're gonna have fancy things, you should at least know how to do basic repairs on them yourselves. My father, for example, was quite good at working on car engines and doing repairs I seem to recall, just replacing spark plugs as well, obviously, but more complicated things as well. Windows and various things in the engines. And that cut down on costs and kept cars running for a lot longer than they would have. In my case, I don't drive, I don't own a car, but I do have computers, I do have smartphones and things, and so I've learned to repair those myself because, quite frankly, getting repairs done when they're needed would be way too expensive. Unless, of course, it's under warranty, in which case, make the manufacturer pay for it. That's part of the deal. So, what is the best piece of advice you've been given that you're willing to share? Please leave the answer in a comment below. Okay. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.